The Dick and Carey model as presented in the Systematic Design of Instruction, 8th edition. The Dick and Carey model was originally developed in 1968, though it was another 10 years before it was published. Dr. Dick presented the original model in a class he was teaching at Florida State University. Lou Carey was a student in the class. She encouraged him to use the materials to create a book. They worked together to publish the first edition of the Systematic Design of Instruction. Beginning with the 5th edition of the book, James O. Carey was added to the list of authors. The Systematic Design of Instruction is in its 8th edition. The Dick and Carey model is a systems-based model. The system is designed so that each piece works together toward a common goal. The model is comprised of 10 components that are visualized as boxes linked together with lines, dashed lines, and arrows. Each box represents a step in the process. While each piece is designed to help reach the end goal, the process is not as straightforward as the graphic implies. The authors of the model explain it this way. Quote, "The graphical arrangement of boxes and arrows, for example, implies a linear process flow, but any experienced instructional designer will attest that in practice, the process can sometimes look more like the circular continuous improvement model." End quote. A brief description of each step in the Dick and Carey model can serve as an introduction to the process that the book explains in detail. Identify instructional goals. Determine if a problem can be solved by instruction and identify what the instruction should accomplish. Goals should be clear statements explaining what the learner outcomes will be. Identifying what you want learners to master by the end of the process gives designers a target to aim toward and provides a benchmark to measure the success of the instruction. Conduct instructional analysis. Determine the steps necessary for a learner to demonstrate the identified goal. Identify the subordinate skills that a learner must have. For example, you must know how to hard-boil an egg before you can create deviled eggs. By identifying the required entry skills, you can ensure that the learner is ready to interact with the new information that will be presented. Analyze learners and contexts. Analyzing the learners, their skills, preferences, and attitudes along with the setting where the skill will be used provides valuable information, especially when it comes to creating the instructional materials. Differences between and similarities in learners' attitudes, skills, abilities, preferences, and motivation can shape what is taught and how it is taught. Write performance objectives. Create statements that specify what a learner will be able to do when they reach the end of the instruction. A performance objective should have 3 parts. It describes what the learner will be able to do, it describes the conditions that will apply when the task is carried out, and it lists the criteria used to evaluate the performance. An example of a performance objective could be, given a kitchen stocked with basic cooking tools, a recipe, and all the required ingredients, create 24 deviled eggs within 2 hours. Develop assessment instruments. Create assessments that allow you to measure whether the learner has met the stated objectives. Well-written assessments should help the designer evaluate the learner's progress and the effectiveness of the instruction. It is important to ensure that the assessment can measure the skill listed in the objectives. Using the deviled egg objective from earlier, I can't develop a multiple-choice quiz or an essay assignment that would allow me to measure whether the learner could create 24 deviled eggs within 2 hours. A multiple-choice quiz may allow me to assess if the learner knows the steps to hard-boil an egg, but that doesn't measure the actual objective, just the required knowledge behind one step in the whole process. Develop instructional strategy. Create a plan on how you will guide learners through the required materials to master the stated objectives. This is the point in the process that you want to bring in the most effective learning theories for your audience, your subject matter, and your delivery system. The instructional strategy will also be used to inform the plan for developing or selecting materials. Develop and select instructional materials. Instructional materials include all forms of instruction. Some examples would be instructor guides, student reading lists, worksheets, handouts, PowerPoint presentations, case studies, videos, podcasts, computer-based multimedia formats, and web pages. Materials can be selected from existing materials, adapted from existing materials, or created to meet the needs of the instructional strategy. Design and conduct formative evaluation of the instruction. Formative evaluation is used to improve the instruction. It can be used to find errors or problems. It is called formative because its purpose is to help create and improve instructional processes and products. 3 types of evaluations are outlined: one-to-one evaluation, small group evaluation, and field trial evaluation. Revise instruction. While revision is listed as the 9th step in the process, revision should happen at each stage. The visual diagram of the model uses dotted lines to remind developers that revision is necessary all along the way. Dick, Carey, and Carey explain revision this way. Quote, "In actual practice, a designer does not wait to begin revising until all analysis, design, development, and evaluation work is completed. Rather, the designer is constantly making revisions in previous steps based on what has been learned in subsequent steps." End quote. Design and conduct summative evaluation. The summative evaluation step is not technically part of the design phase, but it should supply data to determine the effectiveness of the instruction. The summative evaluation is usually conducted by someone other than the designer and is used to validate the instruction. When designing instruction, the Dick and Carey model provides a designer with a good place to start. But even the authors of the model don't believe that this, or any model, is the ending place for a designer. Quote, "In the beginning, they, instructional designers, use a model such as the one presented in this book as a scaffold to support their analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation work. As students and practitioners of instructional design become more experienced and proficient, they replace the scaffold with their own unique solution strategies for the multidimensional problems they encounter in designing instruction. As in any complex endeavor, those who fail to make the jump from dependence to independence never master the discipline and are, at best, good technicians." End quote. So, go implement the Dick and Carey model, but don't let it end there. Learn the lessons it has to teach, then make the jump to independence.